China's President Xi Jinping is in neighboring North Korea for his first visit to the fellow communist state since 2019. After the first of 2 days of talks, Xi expressed China's willingness to expand cooperation in a wide range of areas. No further details were released. Xi was welcomed earlier by North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un in a colorful ceremony, complete with coordinated flag waving and mandated displays of joy from the crowds. Relations between the two one-party states have been cooling off in recent years as Beijing has tried to distance itself from North Korea's nuclear ambitions, but it's thought that China is now looking to strengthen ties again to counteract what it sees as a Pyongyang pivot towards Russia. Let's get some analysis now with Victor Cha. He's professor of government at Georgetown University and Korea chair at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us, Professor. First of all, talk to us about the timing of this visit. Why is President Xi going to North Korea now?
I think there are two reasons, Terry. The first is that this is protocol-wise a return visit by Xi Jinping to North Korea at the invitation of the North Korean leader. The North Korean leader was in Beijing last September and invited him. And so that's one of the reasons why. The reason is that this follows on from Xi's meetings with Trump, where North Korea was a topic of conversation. And so I think Xi may be carrying a message from President Trump about President Trump's desire to meet with Kim at some point while he's in office.
So how does China view its nuclear-armed neighbor? Why does North Korea matter for Beijing other than serving as a buffer between itself and democratic South Korea, a key U.S. ally?
So that, I think, Terry, is the objective of paramount importance, is that they want to maintain the buffer. They want to maintain stability on the Korean Peninsula. Historically, whenever this area has been unstable or destabilized, it has not worked to China's influence. But I think another reason why he's making this trip to North Korea is that Xi Jinping is also worried about Japan. In his meetings with Trump, he complained about Japan's growing military presence, and the president basically responded by saying, you know, Japan is growing its military presence because of North Korea, so you need to do something about the North Korea problem. So I think there are two reasons there. You know, one, on the one hand, it has to do with North Korea. On the other hand, strategically, it has to do with Japan.
Pyongyang has been developing stronger ties with Moscow. Is Beijing concerned about that? Is it worried that North Korea may be moving somewhat out of its sphere of influence?
Yes, I think that's very much a concern on the part of the Chinese. They are comfortable with being the country in the region that has the largest influence over North Korea, and they become always jealously concerned whenever there is another party, whether it's Trump or whether it's Putin, that's trying to gain influence in North Korea. Because of the war in Ukraine, Russia and North Korea have tremendously increased their economic and military relationship, including signing a Cold War-era type mutual defense treaty, which is, I'm sure, something that Xi Jinping is quite ambivalent about. So I think he's also seeking to counterbalance relations with North Korea to counterbalance the influence that Russia is now exerting.
Now, you work in Washington. You recently said that decades of U.S. policy toward North Korea has failed and that a new strategy is needed. You've called for open dialogue with Pyongyang and a push to weaken its ties with Russia and China. Do you see any of that happening?
I think it's certainly possible, but it's not going to happen unless there are meetings between the United States and North Korea, which have not taken place now for 6.5 years, going back also to the Biden administration and the first year of the Trump administration. So if this meeting between Xi and Kim is any way of trying to open a small window into dialogue with the United States, I think that's important. We have not had international nuclear inspectors in North Korea now for almost 20 years, and their capabilities continue to grow and have only accelerated because of the war in Ukraine and the relationship with Russia. So this is a very big wound that is bleeding very heavily, and we need to stop the bleeding somehow before we can actually repair the wound.
I'm wondering about your suggestion that the U.S. should be pushing to weaken North Korea's ties with China. What would that push look like? Is it feasible given that North Korea's economy is utterly dependent on China?
Yeah, it is really dependent on China. 95% of North Korea's external trade pre-pandemic was with China, and China has increased their trade levels with North Korea to pre-pandemic levels. So this is always going to be a very difficult issue. On the other hand, as we saw in the first Trump summits, the North Korean leader craves the attention of the United States. Ultimately, getting the United States to sit face to face with them is considered very important for them. It's not a material objective, but it's an important identity or ideational objective. And so I think if the United States is there, North Korea is going to pay attention. They're going to be willing to talk to the United States. But they need some coaxing out of their shell right now because they're feeling quite comfortable with Russia and with China.
And they're feeling kind of comfortable having nuclear weapons, too. That gives them certain leverage and status. I'm wondering, the policy of pursuing denuclearization on the Korean peninsula, is that pretty much dead?
I wouldn't say it's dead. I think it'll always be an objective of the United States to seek denuclearization. But as a near-term objective, I think it's unrealistic. North Korea has 50 nuclear weapons and enough fissile material to probably make 100 more. They want to become a nuclear weapon state the size of Britain or France. And so we have to aim for shorter-term objectives that can help to reduce the threat and help to reduce the accelerating buildup of their arms. And so that requires dialogue. We can't just sit back and say, we're not talking to you until you denuclearize, because they're clearly not going to do that. They have not been doing that for the past 20 years.
I'm sitting here in Berlin watching what's going on there in Asia from a European perspective. We keep talking about China and Russia and the U.S. being involved in these discussions, also, of course, U.S. allies in the region. But what about Europe? Does Europe have any role to play in pursuing diplomacy in the North Korean power matrix there?
So I think the biggest cost for North Korea in terms of their decision to help Russia in the war in Ukraine, their biggest cost, and they were willing to swallow that cost, was their relationship with Europe. Prior to the war in Ukraine, European countries were really the ones that were the gateway to the West for North Korea. They had a lot of cultural exchanges, language exchanges, and the North Koreans have effectively given all that up because of what they've chosen to do with Russia in the war in Ukraine. So I think the North Koreans eventually do want to restore relations with Europe. Many EU countries had official missions in Pyongyang. So I think they do eventually want to restore those ties, but it's going to take some time. I mean, I think that's where the Europeans do have an in with North Korea, if they're interested in both demarching the North Koreans on what they've done with Russia being unacceptable, but at the same time looking at the possibility of restoring some of those economic and cultural ties.
Victor Cha of CSIS and Georgetown University, thank you very much for talking with us today.